Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Professor Celia Greenway, and I'm the DPVC, which is Deputy Pro-Vice-Chancellor, Student Engagement. And on behalf of the university, I'd like to give you a warm welcome to the Postgraduate Research Festival. I am delighted to be opening the festival this afternoon, and I was asked to speak about how I got to do my role and how I eventually got to be a Deputy Pro-Vice-Chancellor. And obviously, it's made me reflect on my own research journey and how my work has been shaped by my postgraduate studies. So the biggest change to my career came about when I was a teacher. So I actually came late to academia. I was a teacher until I was 40. But actually, in my early 20s, I was a teacher in a secondary school in the UK, and the national curriculum was introduced by the then Prime Minister, Mrs. Thatcher. And she banned my subject. So I'm probably the only person, possibly in the world, that can say they owe their career to Mrs. Thatcher. So Mrs. Thatcher banned my subject. I was a secondary home economist. So I did the sensible thing at 24 and decided I'd have a baby. So I had a baby, and then I got a job teaching at my local primary school. And I didn't realise until then that I was particularly good with very young children, and that I perhaps got the threeness of being three. So I then decided, to help me become a better practitioner, that I would undertake a master's degree in child development and psychology. So my presentation and my introduction is a bit random because I have a picture of a book here. Now this book is still on my desk. You can see there's notes on it. I still use it to this day. So this is a book I encountered in 1992. It has shaped my professional and practitioner practice. It has shaped my future career. And actually it's called Children's Minds. Margaret Donaldson talks about children needing experiential learning and human context. And she talks about making human sense of learning. So I took that book, I did my own master's degree. I then went on to be a lecturer in an FE college, looking at how to train very young practitioners to work with children. And one of my friends, I did say to you this was a bit of a random presentation, one of my friends trained athletes at the university and said to me, he didn't say I was wasted in further education, but he implied it. He said, "You want to do a doctorate, don't you? Why don't you go and work at the university and they'll pay you to do your doctorate if you get the job?" And I said, "Ooh, I've never really thought about working at a university. I'm a primary teacher." So actually, I'm a very unusual person to be talking to you about research degrees and about celebrating research in a festival, because I didn't become an academic until I was 40. So you're all looking at me and say, that could only be yesterday, Celia. But actually, I'm a recent academic and I'm a professor. So it is possible to have a meteoric rise, actually, through your research and your engagement, through your work. My work with students actually has led me to here, but my work with students has been influenced by my academic self. So I fell in love with Donaldson, and in this life, it's unusual to fall in love twice. But I fell in love with the work of Camilla Delberg, and she has completely influenced my approach to professional practice in HE. Although her work is situated in the early years sector, and my doctorate is looking at external and internal notions of quality, her use of meaning-making dialogue is what's made me the leader that I am. So any change I've implemented at the university, I've used my doctoral work and the focus on meaning making to make those transformations. So if any of you are interested in what I've done and you're interested in early years particularly, my early years background, it enabled my life in higher education. So as I said, it's a great pleasure to speak to you today. I have both of those books on my shelf and on my desk actually at the moment in the School of Education. I can honestly say that I use the first one, Donaldson, nearly every day of my working life. It's been a great pleasure to meet you today, and it's now my great pleasure to hand over to our keynote speaker. So Cinder, it's been a pleasure to meet you, and I hope you have a lovely time with us today at the conference.
Okay, so it is my great pleasure to be doing the keynote talk at today's festival at the invitation of the graduate school. When I did get the invitation, I was beyond surprised, but then I was also excited because it is one of the things I like to do. And my research journey was not one of those linear ones that just really go smoothly. So it's something I like to do because I want to encourage somebody out there and get you doing the right things if you can learn from my experience. So today I will be talking about my research journey, so the successes, what worked, the challenges, we know there are always challenges, and of course some top tips to guide you as you continue your own journey. So this talk will address certain things. First of all, you get to know a bit about me, and then about my life as a PhD student, and my post-PhD experience. So what am I doing now? What do I regret? And what would I never do? And then finally, I'll give you, again, the tips, things I think are useful for any researcher. I hope that they will guide you in your own journey. Okay, so I am Dr. Cinder Obadji, and I am an assistant professor in the Birmingham Law School. And in that role, I do a lot of things. So beyond the teaching of undergraduate and postgraduate students, I also do personal tutoring, and of course the big question, the research. So my research does focus on environmental justice issues, energy law, sustainable development, and things in the environmental field. So pretty much everything that has to do with protecting the environment. Okay. Between October 2016 and March of 2020, I was a doctoral student here at the University of Birmingham. So essentially, if this were 4 years ago, I would have been sat there being active at the festival just like you. And like I said before, there's quite a lot that did happen in that period, most of which were good and most of which were learning experiences, which of course I hope that you will find useful as well. So one thing I've been quite deliberate about in speaking about me is including my nationality. So I am Nigerian. So this is something I want to speak about today because I do understand that the university is home to about 10,000 international students. And of course, these students are from about 150 different nationalities, which is something we celebrate. We love diversity. We love to welcome people. And of course, we want to reach out to everyone globally. And the second reason why I have put that there is because I feel like the experiences of international students are quite unique in the way that they operate. So I'll give you an example. The first time I came to live in the UK, I was utterly surprised at how people had healthy, normal conversations about the weather. So this is, I mean, in Nigeria, we would never speak about the weather unless we were expecting a tsunami or an earthquake or, flood. It has to be something that massive. So the first time I came to the UK and people were kind of, oh, how is the weather today? I just went like, is there something going to happen kind of thing? So obviously, there's always the culture shock that welcomes us as international people. But then again, Birmingham is, home away from home for me. And I do, in fact, love it here. Okay. Right. So I think that there was a picture I was willing to show you because it kind of summarizes my research journey, but somehow I've missed it. But that is fine. There's 3 years, 3 months of my life. I think it was, 3 years and 3 months of my life here as a doctoral student it was something. So as you can see, that is a timeline of my research. I call my first year the year of confusion. And then the second year, I call it the year of frustration because I was so frustrated. And then I have the year of integration and the fourth year, which was essentially a 5-month period, is the period which I prepared for my Viva and of course had the Viva. So let's start with the confusion bit. So when I left Nigeria to start up my PhD, I was really enthusiastic about making a change, not just a change, any kind of change, a big change in the life of people who could not speak for themselves, so who did not have a voice. So if anyone is quite familiar with Nigeria, you would know that Nigeria, at least there's lots of things that go on about Nigeria. There's a corruption and there's insecurity, but there's also some good parts. Say that Nigeria is the largest exporter of crude oil in Africa and about the 15th in the world. Well, this is a resource blessing as well as a resource curse. And the reason I say this is because the areas in which this crude oil is found in Nigeria are really in some environmental problems, and this again has led to poverty and lots of issues. So with that crude oil exploration comes oil spillage, and obviously it does affect the land, the water, and people are unable to feed and unable to carry on their daily lives. So my research was essentially, what do we do? So how do we deal with this environmental problem, not only for these people, but also for the environment? I feel like this is quite straightforward, at least I understood it. So I felt like if I spoke to anyone about it, then they will get the idea and maybe praise me for it as well. So I've come in October, sat with my supervisors, and when I explained everything, obviously they did have my proposal, but then sitting with me one-on-one made things a whole lot better. And then they kind of said, okay, that is good. The first thing I want you to do is go to the library and do some more research. Okay. In my head, I felt like more research about what to do about the environment. And they said, well, the research we're talking about is just really about what is out there, what other people are saying. Well, it made sense at the time to know what other people are saying, so you know where to situate your own research. So I did this for a month, came back to them, and they said, well, this is good, but you have to do this for at least 6 months. And I said, okay. I mean, at what point do I start doing my own research and not doing what other people have already done? So that was like a very, it was a terrible period for me because I came with so much enthusiasm, hoping to start making this change, which I thought was possible and then all of that. So I carried on doing that, doing the review and knowing what was out there in the literature. And then, again, at some point, say in the 9th month, I felt really, really good about my research because I had found out what people were saying, and I kind of pieced things together and came up with this theory of my own, which kind of said, for us to do this, for us to protect the environment, we have to do this, that. And I came to my supervisors very happy, saying, oh, well, I think that this research will probably be done in a year or 18 months because I pretty much have what I do need. How wrong I was. And then the questions came in. Where is the evidence to support this? How do we know that this would work? Has it been tried? Is it trusted? Would it work in other contexts? So all of those kinds of things. And with very good reason, I did understand that it's not, research doesn't really work that way. So if you are like me in the first year, thinking that you have the answers to your research, I think it's a bit too early to know that because as you would come to find out, it is a process. And you have to do the research, you have to understand what it is about, you have to know where the gaps are, and then you have to make an original contribution, etc. So it was back to the drawing board for me. Essentially, I was told that I couldn't do that topic, and in fact, do it in the way that I proposed to do it. Then came the frustration. So I had a full year of achieving nothing, at least so I thought. So then came the frustration in the second year. So at this time, I thought that every other person was probably in the writing up stage, which is, I know how it is. But I did feel really frustrated, and I kind of panicked because I thought, I've spent a full year. And by the way, I was a sponsor student as well. So I was thinking about my sponsorship again, thinking about how I must have, wasted the opportunity, etc. So to deal with my situation, I was advised to again situate my arguments within theory. So what is the theories that are already recognized, and how in fact can they be used? And this is what I did. But of course, it wasn't very easy. I spent a lot of time trying to understand what the theory is and how it would work, etc. So at the end of the second year, there was light at the end of the tunnel, and I did find something which worked very, very well. And this kind of made me understand, again, why it wasn't possible or even sensible to have done things the way I did them in the first year. Because having found this theory, every time I was asked about my research, I was very comfortable, very confident about talking about what I was doing, and of course talking about how it has worked in other contexts, talking about what the evidence says, and of course where I will be making that original contribution. It was very easy for me to see where things were going. And then came the third year, which is the integration year. So beyond having the theory, I mean, that's not really enough, is it? We still need other chapters, so the theory was just one chapter of my PhD, and from what we had planned, my supervisors and I, we needed 6 chapters. So we needed to populate the rest of the 6 chapters. But then what I found is that having worked on this topic and the area since the first year, it was very, very easy. So at the end of the day, I found that no knowledge was lost whatsoever. So all of the readings I had been doing, which I thought was a waste of time, did come in very nicely. And it was easy for me to see where to get what to do, what not to do, and what the field does require, etc. So that was very, very nice and smooth for me. And then in the 4th year, I started to prepare for the Viva, and I had the Viva 5 months into the 4th year. Okay, so far it is going well. Let's see. So what were the challenges for me? I have already spoken about the first one, going back to the drawing board. I felt really frustrated. I felt like I had wasted so much time. I felt everyone else was in writing upstage, and I was still in the 1st year. I thought I would never be able to make it. And I kind of became much less motivated than I was when I started up. Beyond this, I also had other issues. So when I started up the PhD, I had a 2-year-old child. And before the end of the PhD, I had 2 under 4s. And that was really challenging. And I know that that might be the situation of some students here who, again, you know, might not be very young when they start up the PhD. So family life there meant that I had to do a lot of things. I had to juggle childcare and, of course, the PhD program, which, of course, meant that I missed out on some events, maybe ones such as this. I missed out on networking opportunities, and sometimes I had to choose between going for a school sports day or coming for one talk by somebody who I really wanted to listen to. So this, of course, was very challenging. The last thing I have there is work-study balance. So what we know would be work-life balance, isn't it? But then I have work-study balance, and this is because in the 3rd year, so at the end of the 3rd year of my research, I took up a full-time position as a teaching fellow at the Birmingham Law School. And while I can speak about it today, I mean, with so much joy, at the time it didn't feel like that. And this is because I had the work, the full-time position, all of the things you do as a teaching fellow on one hand, and then I had a full-time research to commit to as well. So essentially, I had work and study and no life at all. So this meant that I was constantly on my toes. I had to do the work at night when my kids were asleep, and I had little sleep. It was really, really a mess. So at the time when I took the job, I was quite comfortable with my research because it was the end of the 3rd year. I had pretty much everything I needed, but then I soon came to find out that it's not really, it's not really how things are, and I do need some more time. Okay. Some of the things I would like to speak to you about very quickly, because I do understand that we do not have so much time, is the Viva, how my Viva did go. So if you are in the 3rd year, how did this go? How would this go for you? So what did I do? I did prepare a lot, okay? So this, it looks like it goes without saying, but there's no underestimating the importance of preparing. And this is because sometimes your examiners will not know all of your work, much as you expect them to. So being able to articulate what is in the work and what you do mean is very important. And then you also have to speak to people who have done it before. So one thing I did was speak to my supervisor. He was able to put me through what I needed to do, how I needed to go about it. I even had a mock viva, which was very useful because I was put in that position and I knew what to do when I got into the viva, etc. And to help me prepare as well, I spoke to people who were not necessarily in my field. And for my case, it was really my husband. As painful as it was, that's the only person I did have at the time. So with my husband, for instance, every time I brought my research, I'm like, well, this is what I'm trying to do. I have this new idea. Do you like it? Do you think it works? Does it make any sense? And he's just there looking at me, and then he goes, did you do all of this in 3 years? And I'm just like, that's not what we're talking about here. And it's always amazed how people could spend 3 years of their lives trying to do one thing, and it really doesn't make sense to him whatsoever. But again, I found that thing very, very good, because it meant that every time he was always asking questions, oh, why did this happen? Even when I had already explained it, why did this happen? Why not this and why not that? Because he had no idea whatsoever. So this was useful, because sometimes it made me think, maybe I'm not saying that in the way that I can, or other people can understand it. And sometimes he helped me to go back to the drawing board to change things and put things together. So what not to do? Please do not be anxious. That was me sometime in January of 2020. I was really anxious about the whole process. I would sleep and dream about my viva. I would look at my husband and think he is the examiner. I would look at my children and feel like, oh God, there's too much to do, and I have you guys as well. So it put me in a very bad situation, because oftentimes I felt like, this is a bit too much. I need to get this all out of the way, and it wasn't a very helpful thing to do. So what to expect? I don't think you should expect your examiners to be very, you might find some people who are so nice and loving and, make you feel very comfortable. But in my experience, I feel like your examiners really want to know, if not anything, that you are aware of what you have done and that you have good reason for putting up whatever you have put up, which means they will interrogate you and they might make you feel bad about your work. But this is not to discredit you in any way, it's just to get you fighting back. And of course, when you know your work, when you know what you have put in and how much you have put in, that's somehow an easy and exciting process at the end of the day. There are quite a lot of things I want to say, but I'm quite concerned about the time as well, so I'll just really go on and go on. Okay, so post-PhD, how has my life been? I've started with the research and publications. So when I had my viva, I did pass with minor corrections, and the work I had to do to make it fit was just pretty much 1 or 2 paragraphs. It was that short. So the work in the minds of the examiners was quite good. And after the viva, they did say, well, you can produce 3 good pieces of work from this thesis. You can produce 3 articles. And I was really excited because I thought that, well, this is me straight out of the PhD, 3 articles straight to the publishers, etc. But it did not work that way. And every time I submitted those 3 pieces of work, even after revising them, it came back to me as rejected. So the reason I'm saying that is that you do have to be aware that sometimes things do not really go the way you want it, and there are a couple of reasons why that may be. It might be that you need to do some tweaking. It might be that your research has become outdated. It might be that you need to align it to what is trending at the time, etc. And my experience of networking has been really good. I think that networking is something you need to do, even as a PhD student and way after. Much of the opportunities I have got now have come from meeting people at special events, talking about my work, etc. So there's a couple of things you can do. You can do interdisciplinary research. You can obviously be invited to speak here and there, and those things increases your profile and that of the university as well. And on the careers front, and before I did start the PhD, I was essentially a lecturer at a tertiary institution in Nigeria. So in my head, it was a one-way street, just lecture and that's it. But then I have found that it has been a door of opportunities, opened the door of opportunities for me. So I do lots of consulting. I have done paid contributions to magazines. I have, in fact, started to work with governments on the subject matter of my research, and I have started to go on to do some other events leading young people on sustainability issues. So again, do remember that when you're done with a PhD, you are an expert, and of course that there's so many things you can do with that. Okay, so this is the final slide. I'm sorry to have bored you up till now. Okay, so the 3 things I would say you should do. Trust the process. It never, ever feels like you're going right. It never feels like anything is going well, but you need to trust the process. And with trusting the process comes trusting your supervisors. So they do have more experience, and oftentimes they would be leading you the right way. So please trust the process and understand that if you knew the answer to your research, then it's no longer research. So you need to put in the work, and you need to put in the time, etc. So please be good to yourself. Don't take too much more than you can handle. And of course, you have to recognize your little wins as well. So where you have that idea put out, then you know that you have done something great. Then you can also have regular breaks when the ideas are not flowing, just to give yourself a bit more time to come back to who you are. And then the final thing I would say is communicate more. The communication there has to do with networking. So you can start with, say, your schools, your department, your supervisor. Speak about what you do. So most of the opportunities I have gotten have come from just saying, well, I have done this in the past, or I'm interested in that. So sometimes you just get people linking you to this and that and that. And these are very helpful ways to, again, expand your network, gain recognition, and of course, just improve yourself, develop yourself in that sense. Okay, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have been able to take a thing or two. And I'm sorry for going way over time. I think there are lots of failures, to be honest. And then the achievements. So apart from getting the PhD, I didn't realize how much of an expert I have become, because it doesn't really feel like that. It just feels like one other piece of paper in the bag. But then I have come to a place and a time where I have been invited to give all sorts of advice in my area. And sometimes I have been paid just to make a simple contribution to things I would have done for free anyway. But then it just tells you how much you have grown as a person, and how much your research does matter, and how much doing that 3 or 4 year work has increased the depth of knowledge that you do have. So that again is my biggest achievement. I just feel so accomplished knowing that what I have done in the 3 years does really matter, and it's opening doors really. And then the challenges. Was it the challenges you had? Oh, the failures, good. Right. I think that. I think there are quite a lot, and it depends on what context I want to go with this one. Right. So when I finished the PhD, I was again not very sure what I wanted to do with my knowledge, and I kind of turned down some opportunities because I felt like, well, I don't think I have the expertise for that just yet, and which was, it was one of the biggest mistakes of my life. So, for instance, straight out of the PhD, I did this. Work for the Conversation. So it was just a blog post about my research and the things I do. And it was about some crisis in Nigeria at the time. So flowing from that, I got a lot of media attention, and I was asked to speak, say, with France 24 to comment on the security issues in Nigeria. And I felt quite jittery about that one, because again, these are quite political and, sensitive matters. So I feel like not really embracing the opportunities that I did have did not work well at all. So now, having grown through the process, having attended workshops and training events, I have found that there were ways in which I could have handled the situations, while of course giving myself the visibility that these opportunities do bring. So yes, it's just the idea of not engaging more, not knowing what I should do after the PhD, that is my biggest failure. Okay, So I think that has come from my supervisor, and it came at a time when I was really confused and frustrated about the work. And the first thing he said to me is, Cinda, do remember that at the end of the day, your research, it is first, the reason why you're conducting the research is first because you need a piece of paper. Okay, you need the degree. And then everything else you want to do and you want to achieve, you still have, the breadth of time to do that. So that kind of stuck with me because it meant that while things didn't go my way in terms of what I wanted to do, the way I wanted to achieve the environmental protection for Nigeria, there's still a lot of time to get to do that. So all I needed to do is think about what the PhD requires me to do. And then when I get the expertise and when I get recognized, I can still come back to getting all of those ideas that I did have at the start sorted. So yeah. Okay, so I feel like environmental issues have, become the in thing these days. We're talking about climate change, we're talking about net zero. And just a few days ago, I was in London and I was attending the Leaders 2050 events for the next generation of people championing the environment. So now we have people, not just people who are environmentalist focused, but of course, a whole range of companies and organizations thinking about how to protect the environment. And I find that this has opened a lot of opportunities for me as well, because it means I can branch out. My research was on environmental impact assessment, but I'm able to branch out to things such as climate change and things such as ESG, which of course, as we go on, we find that these are very critical matters and they all come together to help us protect the environment. So yes, it is a really evolving field and I'm very grateful for that.